Good morning. Shall we make a start just a couple of minutes after past? So thanks to everybody for coming along today. Can I just check if we have any apologies, please?
Chair, we have no apologies as yet, and if I can confirm at this time, we have Councillor Cathy Muldoon online and also Donald Stavert. Councillor Andrew Miller did intend joining online but hasn't joined as yet, but I'll assist him if he gets in touch.
Okay, great, thank you. Cathy, do you want to say hello just to make sure we've got the connection? Oh, good morning, Cathy.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, great. Good morning, Cathy. And Donald, are you there as well? Just want to check.
Yeah, good morning, Chair. I'm here.
Good morning, Donald. Hi. Okay, if we can start with apologies. Sorry, we've done apologies. Declarations of interest. Anything pertaining to any of the items on the agenda? No. Okay, we've got our minutes of our meeting held on the 4th of November. And which was a special meeting in relating to the budget, and then our minutes on of the 4th of February. And we can confirm them as an accurate record. Thank you, Peter. If we can move to item 5, please, on our agenda, which is voluntary organisation funding, 6-month monitoring report. And I think Dougie is going to speak to this one, Dougie. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of the report is to provide the panel with a 6-month performance update on organisations funded through the various voluntary organisations funding in 25-26. The funding itself is split between 3 areas. The Third Sector Community Support Fund, which is 362,000, and the Service Level Agreements and Commissioning Work, which is 569,000, and the Small Twinning Association's annual grant of 11,900. Section D2 covers the Third Sector Community Support Fund. There's 15 organisations funded through that fund, which is 372,000, which includes an extra 10,000 through the Lintel Trust, and that is covered in Appendix 1, which has a breakdown of some of the indicators within the reports for each of the funded organisations. D3 covers the service level agreement. Again, Appendix 2 covers the 6 organisations covered by either the procured activity or the service level agreements, and the twinning grants is covered within the report as well. Happy to take any questions. I won't go through the detail of them, but happy to take any questions with any of the individual organisations within the appendix.
Thank you. Dougie, can I just ask if there are any questions for Dougie in relation to this report, please? Craig, a question?
Thanks very much, Chair. So in terms of the Appendix 1, is there any organisation in there that you're concerned about achieving the targets that they set out in the initial application, given that we're coming into the last kind of period of the available fund?
Thanks, Chair. There's nothing particularly jumping out at the moment. There's a couple in there you'll note on the note under the larder that we haven't had Q2 update, but in terms of the targets in the first quarter, there's nothing to indicate that they're not on track. We just need to chase that up. There's a couple, I think most of the targets we've picked out here are there or thereabouts or on advance of it. There's a couple think within one of the Lothian African Women's Network, they're a bit lower in the number of participants experience positive change, and the number of participants gaining employment is well below the target number. Although I think the target numbers they set at the start were fairly ambitious anyway. So I suppose they're the only ones that jump out at the moment are a bit off track.
That's grand. Sorry, I did say Appendix 1, but Appendix 2 as well. Is there any concerns from there that any organisation's not going to be able to achieve what they said they did, or in terms of the monitoring?
No, nothing in Appendix 2 is particularly concerning at the moment. The numbers are pretty much on track across the board as far as I can see. I suppose there's a couple of things within the two museum services that could probably be a bit higher. Again, there's nothing we'd be concerning they won't meet those within the next 6 months. I suppose they're the only two that jump out has been slightly below.
That's grand. Thanks very much, Dougie. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Oh, sorry. Councillor Miller.
Thanks, Chair, and apologies, I was a little bit held up this morning. So, firstly, could I just declare a connection to this paper? As a trustee at Amon Valley Hedges Trust, a chair at Firefly Arts, and a trustee at the Nitrogen Adventure Project, would be this item and also item 6. But as there's no, it's just a connection rather than anything that would. It's just a transparency statement, so there's nothing that would preclude me from being here.
Okay, thank you very much.
So the question, and apologies if I missed the very start of the presentation, so apologies if this has been answered, but I'm just really wondering, the Third Sector Community Support Fund, do we have numbers on how many have applied this year and what the value of the applications are?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, at the moment we received 43 applications for this round. And the value of the request was £1,234,652. And the available pot is £362,613. That's 9 more applications than we received last year.
And in terms of value, how much more is that, or less, or whatever?
It's slightly more, but not significantly more for having 9 applications. I think it was just around about the 1.2 last year in reserves.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions at all? I just have just one in relation to the museums. I think you highlighted that, Dougie, but I just wondered what's the position going forward about the numbers. This is the Linlithgow Heritage Trust. Or am I misreading the data?
No, I think the data is just. I don't think there's anything to be concerned about at the moment. I think that they're quite basic indicators, I suppose, for the two museums that are funded through the fund about participation of school learning. So I think the visitor numbers are the visitor numbers. They're not a particular target on that. But I think the other ones there's a little bit more expectation with some of the school engagement. But I can certainly speak to the link officer about any concerns there, but I think generally speaking that would be the only one that's really how they're engaging with that kind of wider community. But I don't think there's anything to be concerned about at the moment particularly, but we've got our 6 months to work on that.
Thank you for that, Dougie. That's appreciated. Are there any further questions at all? No? Any comments? No? Well, thank you very much for that. Dougie, if we can...
Chair, Andrew Miller was looking
oh, sorry,
comment.
If the buttons are working these days, but just comment, Chair. Just a brief comment. It's repeating what I said at the last meeting, and that is, I think it's unfortunate we haven't been able to increase the voluntary sector funds in line with inflation, because I think the organisations, whilst the applications are fairly stable, they all have an increase in cost. So So it's just really making my point, repeating my point from last time. I think we do need to think carefully about how we keep up to speed and keep these organisations thriving.
Indeed, Andrew, that's a good point, and it's something that we all need to be very mindful, I think, as we're looking at the activity and we're looking at the investments going forward. So, yeah, that's appreciated. Thank you. Okay, if we can go on to item number 5, please, which is indeed the organisation's funding and the 6 months monitoring. Oh, sorry. Wrong. Sorry. I've only been doing this for about 18 months now, so, you know, just I'm continuous learning journey. Item number 6. The Voluntary Sector Gateway West Lothian update. And that's from Alan. Thank you, Alan.
Good morning, Chair and colleagues. Thanks for the opportunity to present the report this morning. So this is the 6 monthly update from the Gateway in terms of activities and reports to bring colleagues up to date with some of the key activities that the Gateway and indeed the third sector has been involved in over the last few months. So the purpose of the report is to highlight the fact that we do work closely as part of a working group the third sector has. We work closely with the officials to highlight the challenges and opportunities of groups at local level, both in terms of third sector organisations and indeed social enterprises. So some of the main features that I've put in the report relate to the Scottish Government's Communities Mental Health and Wellbeing Fund, which has been allocated for monies for years 5 and 6. This is a fund that's been running for a number of years now in relation to supporting people at local level with the impacts of social isolation, mental health, well-being, people who've really struggled who've impacted by bereavement or face significant challenges as a result of women experiencing gender-based violence, people from ethnic minority groups. So there's 18 priority groups that the fund is aimed at right across West Lothian. So perhaps no surprise, similar to the previous report, the fund was significantly oversubscribed. We had a record number of monies requested this year, totaling £1.5 million from 76 organisations. So we opened the fund in the autumn of last year, and all groups were advised of the outcome in mid-December, with the monies dispersed to groups for year 5, which is activity starting on the 1st of April this year, to carry out that work. So in total, the independent panel that met had a total allocation of £559,000 to provide. So we made awards to 44 groups. 32 of those groups are getting 2-year indicative awards. That's one of the key elements of the fund this year, which we're delighted about, which is multi-year funding, and that's something the sector calls for both in this group and indeed at national level to support investment in the sector, to provide that stability and sustainability for the sector. So we were delighted that 32 groups received monies for that, and there were 12 groups that got a 1-year award. During the process, we got notification from the Scottish Government of additional monies. So the original £470,000 allocation was increased up to £559,000, but that was for groups just for 1 year. But obviously, that's still really welcome news. We're still expecting formal confirmation from the government about the allocation of monies for next year, but all being well, that will just be a very straightforward process for us to allocate that monies to groups that were successful as part of this process. So again, a really good news story for West Lothian. I think over the last 5 years of the fund, almost £2.5 million been allocated to community groups to carry out the fantastic work that they do. So we're delighted to be involved and as a TSI in managing that process. One of the other aspects that I want to draw attention to the committee about is related to the Gateways Volunteer Awards. So we're delighted that we're going to run, this will be the second year of the volunteer award scheme for people at local level and groups to recognise the fantastic work that community groups and volunteers do to support the fabric of community cohesion. So we've expanded the award categories this year. So there's six categories of awards. It was 3 last year. So we've got an event which is during Volunteers Week in June to support and recognise the fantastic work. So a panel is being comprised very shortly to consider applications from community groups to support that. So we're delighted to be involved in that for the second year. The Gateway continues to be involved in food network support, and we've got a collaboration with Jamie Oliver's food initiative to provide food with dignity for people at local level. So we're delighted to be involved in that. Another aspect of our work that I think is worthy of bringing to the attention of the forum is in relation to governance work. A significant amount of work has increased for us in terms of support to community groups to look at their legal structures. As part of that, I think some of that arose as a result of the management committee and the review of community centres at local level. So a number of groups where we've been involved to support them in identifying which options might be available for them in terms of moving forward with their own legal arrangements. So we're providing a lot of support to that, which is quite intensive work for us. We continue to provide support to third sector groups and forums. So I've highlighted some of those forums on there, from our third sector strategy group to our employability forum and children and families forum. We've also just created a new mental health forum, and that's largely as a result of the work that we do with groups who are beneficiaries of the Community's Mental Health and Wellbeing Fund. So a number of groups at local level have come together. So we're delighted to be involved in supporting that activity. Highlighted some work that we're doing around social enterprise support for social enterprises at a local level. And again, it's noteworthy, and I think it's important that we recognise the Gateway and indeed third sector's role in supporting both the Council's budget consultation exercise as well as the integrated joint board consultation exercise, which also took place quite recently, to put forward opportunities to both challenge critically, but also take advantage of the work that is done at local level. We note, and going back to the previous report, which related to investment in the sector, we did make a call in the special PDSPs, which were set up about whilst acknowledging the council's budget position, of that necessity for the sector to receive the 2.9% uplift which was given to the council from the Scottish Government. The sector hasn't had an uplift in that money, and that has not been, and that's it. It's really important that we continue to press for that, because investment in the sector is absolutely critical, and without that, there may well not be a third sector and the number of groups that exist. So that the sector does face significant challenges. But thank you for the opportunity to present the report this morning.
Thank you very much for that, Alan. Are there any questions for Alan on the report? Councillor Pattle? Oh, Councillor Miller.
Two questions, Chair. First one would be around food network support. It's my understanding that a number of the organisations as part of Food Network are facing an increase in costs due to the community centres now charging. My understanding is some of them will be going from zero rental to £50, £100 a day. Has there been any feedback or anything around that?
Thank you, Councillor. So I think there is an acknowledgement within some of the groups in the sector who are involved in the food network that the challenges they face in terms of the the reconfiguration of charging has had an impact. The food network was previously funded for a number of years with direct support from the council. That monies came to an end last year, and the groups themselves are having to find the monies for that. The network coordination, we're looking at a range of opportunities to find and secure longer term investment in the food network, but it remains a challenge currently. But we're providing as much support as we can to those groups who are still providing food to people at local level with dignity, but it remains a challenge.
Thank you. And the other questions around the governance work you talked about with community centres. Again, it's my understanding that some of these organisations have a very bare bones constitution, maybe written decades ago, and not suitable for the potential wind up. Just what's the scale of the work you're having to undertake, and are there anywhere the committees have dropped below quorum, and if so, what's the solutions to try and help those move forward?
Okay, again, thank you. So I think, in terms of, we recognise that the management committees, as you rightly acknowledged, many of them are working off many articles of association or documentation that goes back decades in some occasions. So we're going back to basics and helping them to understand that they need to comply with current legislation. So we're helping them look at their constitutions, and it's intensive work because, with the best of intentions, these are often volunteers that have pulled these documents together. They've never had the scrutiny necessarily of having to look at their own structures. So we're providing as much support as we can do to them on an individual basis, because they're all different in terms of looking at and helping them understand what they've got in place and what they need to do to meet, I suppose, current legislation. So again, it's identifying pathways for them, providing them with templates for them to consider which options suit their own structures moving forward. But it is intensive work because of the unique situation that they all face. And some of them have got monies in their bank accounts, and some of those challenges that they may have around what they want to do with that money, I think, is one of the things that I think those groups do face.
Thank you. I mean, I assume we'll have further reports going forward to see how it goes. Thank you.
Councillor Patel.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair, and thanks as always, Alan, for the report. I again have just got two questions, and the first one is on the governance again. Just I very much appreciate the fact, I think we all do, that you guys are providing support and advice for the community centre management committees on their potential pathways forward. I just wondered if you feel like you have enough capacity to offer the support that they need, because I think, again, we are all aware that they're all different. They are all unique. So I wondered if you feel like you've got enough capacity and whether the council is also offering that support to them.
Okay, thank you, Sally. I guess that's in terms of our own capacity. It is challenging because we've got one dedicated member of staff who's part of their role to do that work. So I need to make sure, and we do make sure, that enough time is allocated in terms of the capacity that the governance officer provides to groups, but it is challenging. I suppose that's for us to manage that as much as we can. We recognise that's a priority, and groups coming forward, we work as we do to make sure they get as much help and support as they possibly can. And my colleague Ray Fallon, who is driving that forward as our governance officer, is very accomplished in providing that support. But I think it's probably for us to manage in terms of how we do that. In terms of the second part to your question, in terms of
sorry, just in terms of the second part of the question which was about council capacity.
It was just whether Alan was aware if the equivalent level of advice and support was being provided by the council in case the voluntary sector gateway could instead signpost back to the council.
Well, perhaps if I can ask Claire to answer that question, and just because that's essentially a kind of perception. So, and the perception is important, but it might be helpful to get a feedback from an officer in relation to this?
Yeah, of course, whoever's most appropriate to answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's probably fair to say that partnership working is really strong with the sector, and the support that's been provided from management committees, the Gateway have been a really key part in providing and continuing to provide. There's also been officer support, so Dougie Grierson in the Chamber, he's been involved through the regeneration team, Scott Hughes's team, Martin Thompson, Business Gateway, so it's been a real myriad of support. It's been quite a task to be undertaken, but there's been a lot of additional provision put across a range of partners to support that work that's been undertaken for the last couple of years. So Alan's been a huge and key part in that, but it's been part of a jigsaw puzzle, and who's been the most appropriate partner to deliver and lead on that. They've brought in expert advice from other partners out with as they're kind of going through that journey.
Okay. So just my only other question then was just right at the very end, in terms of the budget, you just say that sector reps made a strong case for the 2.9% increase in local government funding to be similarly applied to the third sector. Is that what's going to happen then?
Well, I've raised the question at this PDSP, and I think it was raised in other special PDSPs. We have made the case, and we noted that it was recorded and reported, but I've not had an answer to that direct question in terms of whether or not the sector is going to receive the 2.9% increase. But we've made the case, so we await a response to that.
All right, thanks, Alan.
Are there any further questions? Any comments? Councillor Conn. Oh, sorry. Are you first, Councillor Miller? I apologise.
Don't know. Okay. Yeah, I've already commented on the uplift, and hopefully the council will consider that going forward, maybe even at the 6 months point of the year. But really, my comment is going to be hopefully a positive one. I think the work around the Mental Health and Wellbeing Fund has been tremendous. I think it's been very well administered. I think it's an excellent fund, and the groups that are receiving the funding are doing a lot of positive good in their communities. So I think it's a real highlight of this report, and thank you for the work you've done.
Thank you, Andrew. Sally?
Yeah, again, thanks, Chair. And again, mine is basically going to echo Andrew's. It's just to say, as always, thanks for the report. Honestly, I think that what you guys do is basically superhuman. You know, you are delivering so much to so many people, and it's at a level that makes such a massive difference to people's lives and to communities that they serve. So I think the support and the advice that you provide is phenomenal. And again, I'm really pleased to see that, you know, the pilot of the multi-year funding in the mental health projects are going forward, because I think that everybody agrees that it's that stability that not only the service users need, but the service providers need, so that they're not just continually chasing that funding. So I'm really pleased to see that there was such a good take up for that pilot. And I hope very much that it is proved to be successful going forward. But basically, thank you very much, Alan.
Thank you. Tom?
Thank you, Chair, and can I thank Alan for his report. It was a comment that had come from Councillor Miller, though, that I would like to make comment on, and that was regarding food banks and the use of community centres. I attended the Bridgend locality group recently, and it was outlined what the charges were for various groups using the facilities at Bridgend, but also the number of groups who are not being charged because of the nature of their activity. And this is a contrast. One was blood transfusion service. And I did find it at that time slightly jarring to find out that the food bank were going to be charged, and indeed the individuals who were needing use of the food bank had been asked, had agreed, to be fair, to make a contribution towards the hire of the accommodation. But I think, given the pressures on food banks, etc., that we shouldn't as an intentional consequence, charge them for gaining access and providing us a much needed service to members of our local communities where the cost of living is a daily pressure and every pound is a prisoner. And I would just perhaps ask officers to consider the exemptions, which have already apparently been agreed, that perhaps that needs to be expanded a wee bit further, just to recognise that food banks are an essential partner. Unfortunately, in some of our communities, they are a necessity. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. That's noted. Thank you. Are there any other comments? Just in conclusion, again, thank you very much, Alan, for the detailed report. But essentially, that's only an articulation of all of the work that's done by all of the organisation, and the breadth and depth of what is provided is staggering, and it's testament to the Gateway and to all those leading these organisations that they are being as successful as they are, both in terms of engagement but also essentially in outcomes. I think when it comes to the issue of charging, and Councillor Miller has highlighted the food network, and Councillor Conn has highlighted the issue of the food banks. So I do think that we as a committee and other PDSPs for the various services with the management committees just should be checking the sort of risk factors in relation to the new model, as well as the charging, just to ensure that we are being fair, and that it's not causing significant havoc in relation to service delivery. I don't get that feeling generally at the moment, but I do think we need to be mindful of the management of the system, and the myriad of services that are provided from the community centres in order to ensure that they can continue and thrive as well as possible under the circumstances. And again, it's about understanding if there is any risk to the delivery of that, it would be helpful to know. Any other comments on the paper? No. So thank you very much for that, Alan. We move on to Item 7, please, which is the 2025-26 financial performance, month 9. And I think that's Claire is going to present this to us. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides an update on the financial performance of the Economy, Community Empowerment and Wealth Building PDSP portfolio of services. The financial position included within this report formed part of the overall Council position reported to Council Exec on the 3rd of March. Section D2 of the report details the variance at month 9. Section D3 expands on the overall variances. The underspend of 170,000 is derived from planning income, which is forecast to overachieve by £100,000, and sports facilities within education forecast to underspend by £70,000 due to timing within staff variances. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Claire. Are there any questions at all for Claire? Councillor Miller.
Thanks, Chair. It's really around the Economic Development and Regeneration Community Wealth. Well, no, that's the heading. D3.1, second section. The Shared Prosperity Fund ends in a few weeks' time. The Local Growth Fund, as it's been named now, starts 1st April, but we don't know if we've got an allocation, what the allocation is. We know when we're going to find out. It'd be interesting to know who else is in our region that's been allocated and what the actual hold-up is.
Okay, thank you for that, Andrew. Craig, are you able to answer that question, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good morning. I'll certainly try. Chair, the position is just so that we are clear on the position with the Local Growth Fund. The Local Growth Fund is an allocation to the regional partnership. So within that, there is no specific allocation to West Lothian Council. So just in terms of the allocation coming to the council, that's from within a regional pot, and it's for regional partners to agree what the process is there. There's an ongoing discussion there with the UK government in terms of year one of that funding, which is increasingly recognised as a transition year. So year 2, year 3 of the fund, that will be wholly to regional partnerships with West Lothian delivery from within that regional funding allocation. I say for year 1, there's a bit of a debate and discussion going on about transitional arrangements, and there may be a level of funding specifically allocated to West Lothian as part of that, but that's a debate and discussion which is ongoing. I understand there's, there was a discussion at the City Region Deal Joint Committee on Friday of last week, and following discussion there's a letter going to the Minister seeking further discussion in terms of the year 1 allocation. So a long answer, Chair, to say we don't actually know yet what the overall arrangements are for the 3 years of the project, and specifically in year 1, which is ongoing.
Thanks. I suppose the main concern would be the work that's been undertaken, and are we able to continue that work, or does it have to stop until we know?
Yeah, Chair. So there is, although the funding for the Shared Prosperity Fund ends at the end of this financial year, there is provision for that to be continued, for the work to continue for a period of 6 months. So that will allow some continuity while the arrangements for year 1 of the Local Growth Fund are put in place.
Okay, that's reassuring, Chair. Obviously we'll have further reports. I would ask that at some point, when it becomes a bit clearer, we have a more detailed report, because it's quite difficult to get head round a few paragraphs. So it'd be really interesting to understand, when we have more clarity, what the actual position is. But I'm reassured that we've got 6 months of... No, we aren't in trouble yet. So it'd be good to hear that in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and we've obviously got the next paper on the economic partnerships as well, which is around the context of it all. But I think you're right. We absolutely need to keep an eye on that one. But so thank you for that, Councillor Miller. Councillor Patel.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair, and thank you for the report. It's just a couple of queries. One is quite general regarding the planning services. Does this include planning enforcement action as well? Where does that sit?
Craig?
Yeah, Chair, I can confirm that the enforcement section sits within planning services, so the costs are recognised within the figures set out in the paper there.
Okay, because I totally, like in D.3.1, I absolutely agree that, working with businesses to make sure that they are compliant is the best way forward. But if it is clear that a business is not willing to engage, is not willing to make themselves compliant, how quickly can enforcement action be taken?
Yeah, you're happy to respond to that. So I think there's 2 slightly different processes being discussed there by Councillor Patel. So the figures set out in section A3.1 in relation to dealing with small businesses. So the approach, and the performance figures are set out in the report there. The approach that we take to dealing with planning applications from small businesses is to give those businesses the best opportunity to get their planning submission right. For example, some authorities will refuse planning applications after the statutory 8-week period and won't continue a process of negotiation on those planning applications to seek to get to a position where planning consent can be granted. So 8 weeks, if it's not sorted out, the application will be refused. This council could do that. That's not the service that I would want to provide as part of that. I would want to engage with businesses to see whether we can get to a position where the council can support their application. And that means that takes a little bit longer. And consequently, our performance against national benchmarks is a little bit lower than perhaps we would expect and hope that it could be. I think what Councillor Battle is talking about is particularly enforcement, and apologies to Councillor Battle if I've got this wrong, but
Craig, you never do.
So that enforcement part, so that's not really about dealing with planning applications. The enforcement occurs when a business or an individual does something which they don't have planning consent for. And in those circumstances, we deal with everybody, I would say, equitably. So if you breach planning legislation, the council will deal with that breach in accordance with the statutory provisions that we've got. We don't necessarily treat businesses any different or small businesses any different to big businesses or individuals as part of the enforcement process. So as I'm happy to expand on that, but it's just that distinction between the figures that are set out in the report there, which is about dealing with planning applications, but separately dealing with enforcement, which is a different matter and is not covered by the stats which are set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
All right, Craig, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I think just the only other thing that I was wondering about was the Linlithgow Borough Halls, because I thought at one point that did sit within education. Is that not sitting within education anymore?
I'm not aware of any change.
It does still sit within education.
But it's not reported here?
It is not reported here, no.
Where is it reported then?
It's a good question. I can come back to you and let you know. I don't actually know which PDSP it sits under, but it is still within education.
Okay, all right.
Come back and let you know.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you.
Alan.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just pick up the point in the paper, and Craig gave us a really helpful update in terms of the local growth fund and some of these arrangements that took place in the papers that went to the meeting on Friday of last week. I know in the paper that went to that meeting on Friday highlighted the particular challenges of the third sector in relation to the different arrangements of how the local growth fund is run as opposed to the shared prosperity fund. And I note there was proposals put forward relating to supporting third sector in that transitional year in particular. So I'm just keen to make sure that we're kept informed of that conversation in terms of the outcomes, to make sure the third sector, where we can be supported and protected as a result of the changes that have been made to with the introduction of the local growth fund. Thank you.
Would it be helpful, therefore, if we ensure that the local growth fund is included on the work plan for this meetings, so that we'll be able to track it that way and get feedback? in advance from those groups that are looking at it a bit more detail, but this would seem the right place to be able to have a bit of oversight about that. So, and we can look at that in detail as we go along. Is that okay? Thank you. Sorry. The paper on regional economic partnerships from Craig, item 8 on the agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again, Chair. And this does follow on to an extent from the discussion which we've just had there. But Chair, the purpose of this report is to provide the panel with an update on regional partnership working, including discussions to progress a regional partnership proposition following the First Minister's announcement on the 28th of November last year that the Scottish Government intends to legislate to allow for greater regional empowerment. Members will be aware that the Council already works in partnership across the region, primarily through the City-Region deal, but there are a number of other regional partnerships, such as CESTRAN, which is the Regional Transport Partnership. The announcement by the First Minister was made against a growing support for regional partnerships, with much of the current debate being around funding and devolution of powers to regional partnerships. At this stage, there is little detail around what the powers might be available to regional partnerships, and further consultation is proposed. Following the announcement, discussions have suggested that the Government will work closely with COSLA to develop operational models. Those operational models may not be uniform across Scotland, so different arrangements may apply to different regional partnerships. The Scottish Government has indicated that capacity funding of £400,000 will be available to assist regional partnerships in developing new regional structures. The City-Region deal is bidding for a share of this funding to support the appointment of consultants to advise on a model for the south east of Scotland. Chair, the paper before the panel sets out that there's an opportunity for regional partners to frame the enabling legislation. The paper also sets out in section D7 that this is about top-down devolution, exploring the potential to draw national powers down to regional level. It is not about losing existing powers that sit within local authorities or impinging on their individual sovereignty. The focus will be on issues that cross local authority boundaries and where there is clear added value in working together to address shared challenges and opportunities. Yeah, this is the start of the process, and it's hoped that there will be opportunities to frame proposals to be progressed by the Scottish Government. I'll be happy to keep the panel advised at key stages as we move towards development of the new legislative framework for regional collaboration, but for the moment I'm happy to answer any questions arising from the paper before the panel today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions? I think we have Councillor Patel first.
Yes, thank you very much, and thanks for the report. So I've got a few questions, if that's all right. So the first point, the first recommendation that's made right on the front page here. So they're going to introduce enabling legislation in the next Parliament to allow yada 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 yada. Is it possible to translate that into like human speak?
Here, I'll try. So the suggestion by the First Minister's announcement in November time was to introduce legislation, so new legislation which will give new powers to regional partnerships. So at the moment, the City-Region deal, for example, is a voluntary arrangement between the partners there. There is a document that sits above it which is jointly signed by all the partners, so there's a shared responsibility for for delivering the work of the partnership, but it doesn't have any particular legal powers so it doesn't have the ability to raise funding. It doesn't have any particular policy making decision powers. All policy sits within the individual local authorities who are and the education sector and the business sector who are part of the partnership. So, the suggestion here is that a regional partnership might have some of those powers. I'd say that this is the very start of a process, so we're not entirely clear ourselves, but it's essentially legislating to give that regional partnership more powers than it has at the moment. I'm not sure if that answers.
It does, Craig, and
Patrick's question.
It then throws up a million more questions. I promise it's not a million. But yes, that has sort of changed my understanding, I guess, because you're then talking about, I assume, potential for bringing in paid staff who are specifically for a city, whatever the new city region deal is going to be, and giving them a remit and contracts and everything else that comes with that. Is that essentially what you're saying?
Chair, so the city region deal currently has paid employees. There are a number of employees who are there to deliver the work of the city region deal. It may be that the city region deal partnership will require additional staff to do that, but they're not to do the work of that's proposed by the legislation. But there's no prohibition on doing that at the moment, so that's not particularly one of the powers that would be added. As I understand it, it's more about the ability to establish policy, to make specific economic interventions that they don't do at the moment. So, for example, the city region deal doesn't have any particular transportation powers. Those sit with CESPLAN and the Scottish Government, but it might be that the new regional partnership would be able to deliver transportation services, for example, just as one example, or it would be able to fund infrastructure, which it doesn't do at the moment. So I think, Chair, it's more those sort of interventions that the legislation is pointing towards. But, I caveat all of that with the legislation isn't there at the moment. This is a discussion. We've got the opportunity to frame that legislation, and that's the stage we're at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so then my next question, we're right at the beginning of this process, but my understanding was that the city region deal in its current form was sort of winding down. It was coming to an end. So what is the transition timetable as you understand it? Because if we don't even know what the legislation is, we don't even know what a new city region deal is going to be called even, what's the time frame as you understand it?
Yeah, so Chair, I think maybe the first thing to say there is that we probably need to make a distinction between the city region deal and the new regional partnership. So the city region deal, as Councillor Patel sets out, was a specific legislative provision with a funding arrangement there to do that, and we're now halfway through the process or the lifetime of the city region deal, and my understanding is that this is looking beyond the city region deal to a new arrangement. So it won't be city region deal 2. It will be some other form of partnership, and I think but perhaps government. It's not for me to speculate, I guess, on what's happening there, but. If you look south of the border, the partnership around the city of Manchester, for example, the arrangements there is viewed as something that has been positive in terms of developing the city of Manchester and the surrounding areas. So, it may be pointing to something like those arrangements. So, it won't be the city region, as I understand it, it won't be the city region deal 2 or, the follow. It will be a follow-on from the city region deal, but it will be a different legislative body to that which we currently have. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that's great. I've got like another 3 questions, if that's all right. Again, point 3, I will get off the front page as well. My heart slightly sinks when I see they're going to engage a consultant to tell us things at the cost of hundreds of thousands of pounds. I noticed on page 3, in D3, it says that there's capacity funding, £400,000 available across the Scottish regional partnerships to support the development. So is it £400,000 across the whole of Scotland that will be spent on consultants? And will it be the same consultant that develops something for each of the regions, or are you all going to engage your own consultants? God, a good time to be a consultant in Scotland. Greg.
Yeah, so the £400,000 is across Scotland, so there is no specific allocation to the southeast of Scotland within that 400,000. We need to make a bid for that. That's there to build capacity within the city region partnerships. So it's up to individual partnerships to make their bid into that and to spend that money in whatever way they want.
Oh, I see. So it's not like you're like, all right, we're Edinburgh City Region deal, we're the best, give us lots of money. You have to like actually bid for like a specific project.
Yeah. So, Chair, it's both of those. I think we will be saying we're the best, and can we have a big chunk of the money? But I'm wise enough to know that each of the other partnerships will be presenting exactly the same argument, and it will be for the Scottish Government to decide the allocation of those funds based on the bids that are put to them. So, but I said in my presentation that my understanding is that this isn't necessarily one size fits all across the regional partnerships. So, the Glasgow City Regional Partnership, for example, might propose a different governance arrangement to the southeast of Scotland. It's up to those organisations to make their bids for, firstly, the funding, but secondly, for the framing of the legislation to suit their particular purposes. So there's a bit of competition here, but there's also I suppose a shared understanding from the government that this is about developing partnerships across the city regions in Scotland.
Okay, right. I've just got 3 more and I think they're quite quick. What is a regional intelligence hub? What does that mean?
Yeah, Chair, my understanding is that it's about developing a repository of regional intelligence. So it's not necessarily a physical thing. It's about a process for sharing knowledge and understanding across the city region, so that a city region would have a single source of population information, a single source of economic information, a single source of social information. So it's building all the information that we know within the region into a single repository.
And would that be available to the public or just for like local authorities or regional transport bodies? I'm just trying to visualize this because in my head, it's like a big library I can go to and be like, this is the intelligence I seek.
I think, I'm sure Craig will be able to respond to that, but I'm just kind of conscious that there is absolutely no detail around any of this at the moment.
There isn't at all.
No, because, there is in terms of the discussions as Craig is highlighting. What Craig is highlighting is a point in time. I'm just kind of conscious of the fact that we've not actually got a new parliament yet. Because they can't.
Oh, so we've got to wait until after May.
Well, this is suggesting legislation going into next year. This is how the regional partners are currently operating and responding to what the Scottish Government are putting forward at the moment. So obviously, in relation to timescales, that's why there is only so much that can be done within a certain timescale. So I think what Craig is doing a very good analysis as to the position and what it could look like. But obviously, a lot of that would need to be firmed up over time. Is that a fair analysis, Craig?
Yeah, I think, Chair, that's a very fair analysis. As I said, we're at the start of the process here rather than the midpoint or the end of it. There's an awful lot of work to be done here to understand what the process is, and that needs to start with the legislation, which won't progress until at least the next Parliament.
Okay, in that case, I've just got one more question, if that's all right. So I'm just interested in D6 opportunity. It says at the bottom, important that the competitiveness, that's hard, of Scottish city regions is not compromised by the enhanced powers of the new strategic authorities in England. There is therefore advantage in being an early adopter within the context of the enabling legislation. Do you think then, have you seen any evidence that, for example, southeast of Scotland is losing out on opportunities because companies' investment opportunities are looking at Scotland and thinking, no, it's not clear, we're going to go to Manchester and the King of the North?
Sure, I don't have any evidence of that at this point in time, but the paper is setting out it's something that could happen if there's a perception that it is easier to operate in one part of the UK against the other, but no evidence at this point in time.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Thanks, Chair. Again, just trying to get my head around all this. Geographically, is Edinburgh and South East of Scotland City region the same region as the Scottish regional partnerships we're talking about, and is that the same region as the local growth fund regions we were talking about earlier? Is it all geographically the same, or is there differences?
Chair, but broadly, yes. So the local growth fund allocation is, as I understand it, across the city region deal partnership, so the geography is the same. Nothing's ever straightforward, is it? The Part 5 sits within two city regions. There's the A city region and the South East Scotland city region, and sometimes funding arrangements across those are can become a little bit confused. The same situation arises in the very southern part of the Scottish borders, where there's a regional partnership that crosses the national boundary, in fact, but also into Dumfries and Galloway. So broadly, the local growth fund allocation is consistent with the existing city region deal. The proposition in the paper here, or the legislation that's pointed to in the paper here, is at that very early stage. So it would be, as I understand it, open for the geography of a regional partnership to be different from the city region deal. And Chair, I'll use one example. So I mentioned Sestran, the regional transportation partnership, in my presentation as one example of regional collaboration that operates on a different geography to the city region deal. So, for example, it includes Falkirk and Clackmannan, whereas they are not within the city region deal arrangement. So, broadly, yes, but it's the start of a process, and it could be a different geography.
Very good.
Thanks for that. Yeah, a lot of my background in the council has been with education and things like the Children's Reporter, and we took very conscious decisions when doing regional collaborations to go to similar authorities such as Falkirk and Stirling rather than tie in with a city, which we'd had sort of previous bad experience of cities being very dominant of any partnership and sometimes to the detriment of the outlying areas. Has our experience of the city region been positive, and do you have any concerns about tying up with such a massive entity as such as a city and us being a small West Lothian?
It has been broadly positive. We can always do better in terms of what we gain from regional partnerships, and we're always looking to do that. I think, Chair, it's also fair to say that in terms of the Edinburgh South East Scotland City Region Partnership, we're right at the very western edge of that, if you will. So, we do keep a close eye on what's happening in partnerships to the west. Falkirk, Stirling, Clackmannanshire as one City Region deal arrangement, but also the Glasgow City Region deal arrangements as well. So, yeah, positive. We clearly there's a financial benefit in continuing to work in City Region partnerships, but as the paper sets out, we should always be doing what is best for West Lothian in terms of local decision making, local sovereignty. And this is about delegation of powers, additional powers down the way, and not taking away powers which we already have locally. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Conn.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I should have maybe made a declaration earlier rather than now, but I think I'm actually a member of the City Region Oversight Group, which I didn't mention because I didn't think we were going into some of the depth that we have done. And Craig, you mentioned CESTRAN. I'm on the CESTRAN's board and a couple of subcommittees, so I'll declare that. I thought we were just at a higher level than this. But the thing that for me in some respects is we have constituent councils and we've now got a regional partner. Surely the whole way of simplifying what we do on a whole range of things is actually authorise give powers to the constituent councils to do the things which we seem to be suggesting in the proposals to give, unlock new powers, design delivery models tailored to local priorities, but to a regional partnership. Now, how does a regional partnership be a local priority? And for a number of years, councils have been asking for a general powers of competency, where unless it can be shown that the council can deliver something, or it doesn't have the financial resource, then that's how councils should operate. And I'm just getting the feeling here that we're creating complication, and I think some of the conversations that we've had, we're creating a complication of government in how we're doing things. So I think my first question in some respects is, are we going in the right direction to actually deliver something which actually will get benefits of what seems to be the intention of the First Minister's proposals?
Craig.
Yeah, Chair. So as Councillor Conn sets out there, this is an announcement by the First Minister in terms of an intention for the Scottish Government. And again, in the paper and when I was presenting the paper, I indicated that there will be an opportunity for consultation and engagement through this, through COSLA as one route, but there's, again, as my understanding, there'd be nothing to prevent the council submitting its own position with respect to what is proposed by the First Minister, or was announced by the First Minister. So, this is a paper which tries to build something around that announcement, but it doesn't prohibit the council taking an alternative view to that.
Yeah,
Thank you, Craig.
Thanks for that. Sorry.
Sorry, no.
Just on that whole basis, because of how others make decisions on our behalf, or because they have the power to do it, and Network Rail for me is one of them. That clearly we have a situation at Winsborough where Transport Scotland been involved, Network Rail and whatever. But if we were the transport authority in the sense that we had that power, then we would be telling them what we want to deliver in our council rather than them telling us. The example up in Newton, where there's a level crossing, which is a barrier to sustainable transport. We have to negotiate with them rather than telling them that, look, this is what we want you to do to deliver for our constituents. And it's that, for me, is if it genuinely is top down, it is to give the councils the powers to actually instruct others who have statutory undertakings that, to be blunt, they are stripped of their powers in some respects, and the power is given to the councils to say this is what we want, rather than having to negotiate. And I'm just trying to get to where's the benefit of a regional partnership, but if we're going to have to discuss things at a higher level with other partners who might not see the same relevance to a local project that they have, and Edinburgh might well be that constituent council where their interests are not ours. So I just practicalities of what we're trying to do here.
Is that a question, Tom?
Well, yeah, it's what is the practicalities of top down, but if we're not getting it top down to the organisation that can make that strategic decision on behalf of their constituents, rather than giving power to another organisation who might not have the same priority as us. So it's this top down of power that's been suggested in the paper a lot. I'm not saying it's Craig's issue, but it's that type of situation. If it is top down, it should be coming top down to the relevant organisation. That's what I'm trying to say.
Is that a rhetorical question?
I believe it is rhetorical. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Councillor Patel.
I've got a very belated declaration of interest, but also a comment. I don't know when you want to. Do you want me just to do them both?
If you want to make the belated declaration of interest, that would be helpful, because as Councillor Cohn was speaking, I thought I must do two. So
again, similar to Councillor Cohn, I had seen this as a more high level, but we did get, it was a really good, it's been fantastic. It's been a great discussion. I've learned a lot. So thank you. But yes, I'm the chair of CESTRAN, which obviously I should have declared.
As a transparency statement.
Yes.
Thank you for that. So also as a transparency statement, I'm just highlighting, I'm also on the elected member oversight committee for the current arrangements as they stand across the city region deal. Okay, can I just move to any comments that anyone has?
Yeah, it was just to say thank you very much to Craig, because the report was very informative, but having the discussion afterwards has really helped to clarify a lot for me. So I wanted to extend thanks for always being so open and knowledgeable about everything that is happening. I'm very much a proponent of regional working. I think it is of benefit. I think there's always things we can do better. I think that, we're always going to have to stand up for West Lothian and not be swallowed up by the big boys, but we can do that. And I'm hopeful that given appropriate levels of funding, given appropriate time to construct something, that a new phase of regional working is only going to benefit us. So that was all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Miller?
Thanks, Chair. It's been really interesting. I somewhat agree with some of the things that Tom said. We disbanded the regional councils many years ago for good reason, and I'm very wary of recreating them in non-elected form. particularly the experience we had in the past of being tied to a city and having the resources sucked into the city. However, having said that, partnership working is a very positive and essential way forward. I suppose the question at the end of the day is just where does the authority ultimately lie? And I would agree with Tom, more of it should lie with the local authorities rather than with a broader body. It'll be interesting to see where we go forward with this.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Conn.
Yeah, no, it's just brief. I mean, in some respects, by being on City Region Deal, being on Sestran, and in some respects as well, in a past life when I worked with the Regional Council Assessor's Office, I can see the benefits of working across boundaries, because in many respects boundaries are artificial. They are drawn by the Boundary Commission or by government and whatever. But clearly, when you've got a neighbour, you have to try and work with them. And a lot of our residents, constituents travel to Edinburgh in the main or elsewhere. But seeing some of the discussions and how we can knit things together, and things which at times we think have no relevance to West Lothian, but they do. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, there's no point, I don't think, in giving additional powers to an organisation where councils have been saying for years that's where it should lie with us. And then it gives us the opportunity what partnerships we want to be with. And that's not saying I'm anti-Edinburgh or whatever. It's just saying that we need to face the way that will give us the best benefits for our constituents, whether it's with Falkirk on one side or Edinburgh on the other, or I never remember the Lanarkshires that were attached to both of them. But yeah, so in Fife, would it have been nice to have a West Lothian tunnel across the Fife rather than a bridge in South Queensferry? But there I go. So the power, I think it should be getting devolved if that's where we're going, to councils and not to the regional authority, regional partnerships, where if the councils have that power, we can make the regional partnerships. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for all participating in this this discussion. I mean, it is a moving feast, and there's a lot there still to be done. A lot has been done, but a lot there still to be done. But I think the point is well made that we will be and have done ensured that. What the position is for West Lothian is front and centre to all of it. So as new arrangements emerge or there are further discussions, then I think we need to be very clear that at officer level, elected member level, and at chief executive level, we will be ensuring that West Lothian sits at the front and centre of it, and that we are. Continue to be in charge of our own destiny, but at the same time see some significant benefits of that cross regional working, and also it just kind of helps the appreciation of this PDSP, because there are so many ways in which the regional arrangements can impact on what it is that we do, whether or not that's through housing, transport, etc. But actually, this is an important place in order to have those discussions to ensure that we are indeed looking at the wider economic and community engagement and the wider infrastructure that we require across West Lothian, and have that here. So thank you for that. Okay, I shall move on to item 9, Pride in Place. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to provide the panel with an update on the Pride in Place programme. On the 12th of December, it was announced that the areas that were selected for the UK Government's Pride in Place Phase 2 funding would be Falthouse, Whitburn and Blackburn. Appendix 1 of the report contains a map showing the 3 areas. The programme will see a total of 20 million being provided to the areas over a 10-year period through a mixture of revenue and capital funding, and Section D1 of the report has a table detailing the estimated volumes per annum over the 10-year period. Programme requires a local neighbourhood board to be established to manage the funding, and this will comprise of the local community, local elected members, MPs and MSPs. Whilst the board will be responsible for the Pride in Place funding and the action plan to deliver that funding, there is a key role for West Lothian Council, which I've included within the report, including being the accountable body for the funding and supporting the initial community engagement in the areas to support the development of the neighbourhood plan. And a payment has been made to West Lothian Council of $150,000 to support this activity. Section D4 of the report contains the key milestones for the programme that will be progressed in 2026, which is seen as the development year, and this includes the appointment of a board chair and the establishment of the board, which will be the focus over the coming months. The board will then support the production of a plan for the funding, and Appendix 2 of the report contains guidance on areas that can be funded through the Pride in Place programme. It should be noted that the fund is a fairly new fund from the UK government, and it's constantly evolving and changing, and we're closely monitoring and keeping up to date with developments. There was a number of local authorities that were provided with Phase 1 funding, and they're just at the position where they are submitting their plans at the moment, so there's some lessons to be learned from Phase 1. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Claire. Any questions at all? Councillor Patel.
Yes, thank you. It's just a question on D2, which is the makeup of the board. It says it's got a minimum of 8 members. How does it have a maximum number? Because it seems like there's an awful lot of people that should be a part of the board. I'm just wondering how you are going to identify, residents, local businesses, grassroots campaigners, workplace representatives, faith and community leaders. Plus, you've got 2 MPs, 2 MSPs, and a minimum of 2 ward councillors. But are you really going to go into a Hunger Games and say that many councillors are not allowed to be on the board?
So there's no minimum, there's no maximum. There's a minimum of 8, but there's no maximum for the board as the guidance at the moment. The key role for how the board is set up will be discussions with the chair, the MP, and the council to look at the membership. But there's no maximum amount. And some of the Phase 1 boards have got huge memberships, so there's no maximum. Is the short answer.
Okay, and can you just expand a little bit on how you are going to identify the residents, local businesses, grassroots campaigners, workplace representatives, faith and community leaders?
I don't think we're at that stage of the process, Councillor Patel.
Okay.
The initial stage is to establish the chair and then to take it from there. So we're not at that stage at this process.
Okay.
Our intention is to keep the PDSP updated on how Pride in Place develops over the coming years, but we're not at that place at that point.
Okay, that's brilliant. But you're going to come back and tell us. Thank you very much.
Councillor Heggie.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, this board will have an interest in potentially quite incredibly broad remit. I suppose my thoughts are, have we thought about a lot of kind of organisations and charities now almost create I suppose like a bespoke, this is who we need, this is what we need on our board. You see it a lot advertised, when people are looking for trustees for charities, we need somebody with certain skills. And kind of reading this before, I think you would need people with, I suppose, like my colleague Councillor Patel said, with the skill set to come in. I'm thinking probably because, the deadline was mentioned in November. It's only 8 months away. It's for them to actually come up with a first plan. And obviously, you've still got summer vacation. You've got to recruit people. People have to have an understanding. It seems like a big challenge.
I think what I would say is that the 3 areas that are eligible for the funding, we've been working in regeneration in those areas for a number of years. They've got regeneration plans. There's been a lot of community engagement. There's also very, very well developed and established community development trusts who own assets, who are very engaged in regeneration. There's a lot of third sector organisations in those areas. So while say we're not at the stage of developing the board membership, which we absolutely aren't, there is vast opportunity within those areas to bring skills from across a range of sectors and knowledge once the process is in place for that. And that's something that we'll be working on, but we're not starting from a blank canvas in these 3 communities. We've been working in them. We've got relationships and networks, and we've got an understanding of some of the challenges and the opportunities within those areas.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Meek.
Thanks very much, Chair. So on page number 2, details how the capital and revenue funding will be split out over the period. Why is the revenue higher than the capital in the early years, and then it obviously switches? Is that set? Can that change?
So we've obviously not determined the split between the capital and the revenue. That's been the programme that's determined that. My understanding is there's flexibility in terms of spending between the years within the headings, but the capital and revenue amounts are to remain the same broadly. So there is the ability to deliver infrastructure, but there's also the revenue to support that. But you can move it within years, but the total figure is the same. So there is a bit of flexibility.
Perfect. And not that I imagine that we'll be in this position, but can we carry over funding if it's not spent within that financial year?
So my understanding is, like I say, there's flexibility to use it between the years. So there's a discussion with civil servants about that allocation. But my understanding is there's flexibility to use it, particularly if you're planning large capital projects that straddle multi-years and how you manage the delivery of those. So there is some flexibility built into the programme for that.
Perfect, that's grand. In terms of the first year, the 150,000, that's obviously been paid to West Lothian Council to set up. Is there ongoing monies going to be available to West Lothian Council to support and to administer the fund?
The only one we're aware of at the moment is the 150,000.
That's grand. So I know in reading the report that it's pending a spending review for 28-29, and whilst it's probably unlikely that it'll change dramatically, but it may. We don't know, and that's where that's where the significant money kind of kicks in to truly deliver on the principles of the fund. I'd be confident that we could actually deliver on the principles of the fund, given that effectively year 2 is when we're going to be doing things, is only 390,000, and then year 3 is 1.36 million. Are we confident that we could actually deliver on the principles there?
I think what we'll set out to do is develop a plan that meets the needs of the community, and we'll work with civil servants within the government to monitor that on an annual basis, including what the parameters are for the funding and the future funding. And we've already established a relationship with civil servants who've been up to visit us about the programme, and we'll continue that as the journey goes on, Councillor Meek.
Thank you, thanks very much. In terms of the plan that's going to be submitted and hopefully approved, so we note that we've got to submit it by, is it November? What's the timescale for approval? And do we have any leeway if it's not approved to then obviously resubmit?
So at the moment, there's no information on what the timescales are for approval, or what the process would be if it's not approved. I think you note from Appendix 2 that the indicative kind of provision that you can do with the funding is quite vast and it covers quite large areas of regeneration. So I think there's a bit of working with ministers and officers to look at what the plan is delivering. So at the moment, we've got no timescales other than November. All the timescales we have are contained within the report.
That's grand. A question on the composition of the board itself. I do note that Councillor Patel asked a similar question, so I'll try not to cover that. But certainly, in terms of the meetings itself, do we have like guidance on how the meetings should operate at the moment? Because I'm could envisage that we could have more elected members at the meetings than what we do others, and I know that it's got to the other category has got to outweigh the political category. So we're in a position where we know yet what that's likely to be.
So we don't know at this particular point. First stage is to establish the chair, recruit the chair, and then to agree the composition of the board and how it'll work governance-wise after that. And that's the kind of timescales, and that's the steps we need to take.
Perfect. And last but not least, in terms of as local members, we across the both wards, we are getting people asking why particular areas were obviously discounted as part of the map that was drawn out. So if we take, and I know we've covered this before, but it was just for clarity, so people can understand. So East Whitburn, we appear to have kind of cut around the edges there, and Longridge again we've drawn right round the community of Longridge, so it couldn't be included, and then obviously the outskirts, every other kind of community near enough in the Falthouse and Break Valley. So what's the best message to go back to constituents when they ask why that was?
So the process was that data zones were aggregated up into intermediate zones, and they've been included as part of the map. So that was the process, and that was based on a range of economic indicators, income, deprivation. There is the ability to look at coverage as part of it, but this is the 3 areas that have been identified. I will say that having discussed it with civil servants, you can do activity within those areas that has a benefit for the Pride in Place and vice versa. So there is some flexibility at the margins for communities that are on the periphery. So because a street isn't included in the map doesn't mean it shouldn't benefit from it. So this is the areas that are eligible, but there is flexibility within that to have provision that will benefit the area or will benefit the wider regeneration aims of that area.
Perfect. Thanks very much for that clarification. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Miller?
Thank you. D3 says that local authorities have been identified as being responsible for, and there's a list of things including working with local MPs to appoint the neighbourhood board chair, and then working with local MPs to approve the final board membership selection, which is to be proposed by that chair. In this context, who is the council?
Craig.
Chair, so senior officers are working with the 2 constituent MPs to progress those discussions. Thank you.
Is that the discussions as to who will be the council, or discussions as to who will be the chair?
Craig.
My apologies, I just missed the first part of Councillor Miller's question there.
I suppose there's somebody from the council, or some people from the council will be responsible for helping select the chair. Just who are they going to be?
So, I'm still struggling slightly, but was that, are you looking, is Councillor Miller looking for individual names?
No, it's as I understand it, it's the process for the appointment of the chair.
So, I say senior officers are discussing that with the MPs at the moment. It's not a process that has been concluded at this point in time. It's a discussion which is ongoing.
Okay, so yeah.
I think that's probably as best as possible to answer at this stage, but obviously when we'll...
I understand, Chair. Particularly with regard to the member selection, are we saying that there'll be no elected member involvement? It'll not be for any committee or any PDSP. It'll be purely senior officers of the council, and has this been delegated to them?
Here, again, it's the same answer, unfortunately. So we've not concluded that process at the moment. We do need to work at some speed on it, but at the moment that's a process that's ongoing. We're working to understand the guidance, and we're working with the MPs, as I say, to take that forward.
Thanks for that, Craig.
Yeah, so we will get a further update at some point.
Yes.
Not before the next committee, though, will we make sure that we're kept informed, because I think it's fairly important.
Yes, obviously, as a overall council, will be ensuring that there is the information is disseminated when we're clear as to what the position is. So thank you. Okay, Councillor Conn.
Thanks, Chair. The various projects that are on the indicative intervention lists, clearly there's not enough money to do everything, which is there. If it was, then hey, we'll win the euro millions. But seriously though, on an ongoing basis, given the Pride in Place is funded for a fixed period, it's the consequences thereafter of any projects which are initiated or helped develop. Is there an expectation that where at the moment the council does have responsibility for like green spaces, verges and that, where all that type of thing is done, that the council will take any improvements under its responsibility on an ongoing basis, rather than it's still going to be the board's responsibility to it concludes its projects. So where does the council's longer term liability lie in doing all the works which are agreed by the board?
I think, Claire, are you able to answer that question? Thank you.
So I think anything that's put within the Pride in Place plan will have to go through that due diligence, and that's what happens when we do any of the kind of works in the community. It may not be the council that undertakes the works, it might be other organisations, it might be community organisations. If, like I said before, there's a number of very active community development trusts in these communities, so anything that's put in the Pride in Place plan, that due diligence will go through what's the ongoing maintenance, who's responsible, whose land is it, what's the impact it's going to make. That'll be part of the discussion in terms of looking at what will be identified for the spend, particularly around any capital works. At the moment, we don't have a list of what it could look like in the plan, but once we are going through that process, that's what will happen and be undertaken.
Right, so whatever achievements, whatever improvements are carried out, because the board may no longer exist because it's done its job, there will be parties identified to carry forward and do that. So it's not just a short burst and then, well, things just fall to bits again. Right, thank you.
Okay, thank you for those questions. We've had some big topics here today. So just to we can just come to the item 10, the work plan, please. Are we agreed? The work plan, sorry. Oh, sorry, did I... comments? Comments? Councillor Meek.
So whilst the funding, I think it's really important to say it's very good news for West Lothian and many other areas throughout Scotland and throughout the UK. And it's great news for obviously Whitburn, Blackburn and Falthouse. I do worry about the future of the fund, but equally given that it's up for a spending review and whether we're going to be able to meet that 2 million per year as intimated. Now, in terms of the start as well, I'm quite concerned that there's still quite a lot of unknowns, and we've got a plan to pull together and submit by November, but I've got every confidence in the officers of this council to be able to work with the UK government and our communities to pull that together. Because obviously there's going to be quite a significant benefit to these communities. So just welcome further updates as they come along. Thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Thanks, Chair. I think I would echo that it's really positive that there's an investment and there's money here and there's a way forward. The unknowns are obviously needing to come together. I think it's interesting and very good that we have revenue for a change in a project as well as capital, which allows us to run whatever, maintain or do whatever we need to do with the things that are built. However, I think I would also, I think Tom touched on this, the capital you spend, you build something, it's done, the revenue's ongoing year on year and the revenue stays static yearly. So as you're increasing the number of things that you've done, I would imagine the revenue cost of whatever attached to them will probably increase. That's something they're going to have to look at very closely when they're approving whatever projects are there. Lastly, I would say that it's probably fairly important in my mind that the board is geographically and politically representative. I don't think we need all 7 councillors on there, but I think a good spread would be useful. And also that each of the communities have good solid representation. I was going to ask a question about that, but I think Claire covered that by saying that we're already involved in these communities, and so we do have a number of organisations and people that we know would be good to have on board. So I think it's just to emphasise that it's really important we get that geographical spread and the political spread too. Sure.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Miller, any further comments at all? Okay, so we'll move on now to the work plan. Can we agree the work plan, please? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and your questions and comments today. There have been some meaty topics in there, so thank you very much.